Good evening. The board now convenes this meeting of the Little Elm ISD Board of Trustees in open session on Monday, June 8th at 6:30 p.m. at the Zeller Center for Learning and Leadership. I am Deleon English, President of the Little Elm ISD Board of Trustees. On the board's behalf, I would like to welcome all who are present to our meeting. Let me introduce my fellow staff and trustees. Seated to my right is Ms. Leanna Harding, our Vice President. Trustee Cooper Vegas is currently unavailable. Trustee Christopher Williams is unavailable. And Superintendent Dr. Lowell Stripe. To my left is seated Trustee Alex Flores, our Secretary. Trustee Jason Olson. And Trustee Melissa Myers. For Superintendent's leadership team, we have present the following. Deputy Superintendent Matthew Gutierrez. Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Cindy Nicka. Executive Director of Human Resources and Services, Ross Roberts. Chief Financial Officer, Grant Anderson. Director of Facilities and Construction, Rod Reeves. Director of Communication Services and Community Relations, Pat Robbins. Director of Technology, Integration and Media Services, Russell Van Dusen. The trustees as a board corporate have the exclusive power and duty to govern and oversee the management of the public schools of the district. The board's responsibility and duties is to assure the public that the district resources are being used efficiently and effectively. The board's role in management oversight shall be to ensure the integrity and performance of all major systems, including but not limited to finance, human resources, technology, transportation, food services, custodial grounds, safety and security, construction management, and facilities maintenance. Leadership, management, and operational responsibilities are charged to the Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Lowell Stripe. For the public, this is a working session meeting which has allowed the board to discuss the business of the district. For the citizens input portion of our agenda, the board has made available public comment cards that are accepted at or before the regular meeting begins. Cards are not accepted after the meeting has started. All cards will be collected and given to the board secretary or representative who present to the speaker during the time. At this time, I'd like you to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take this flag.
Honor to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Lowell Stripe,
Here.
Miss Melissa Harding,
Here.
Miss Leanna Harding, I'm looking at Miss Leanna Harding, here. Mr. Deleon English,
Here.
Mr. Alejandro Flores,
Here.
Mr. Jason Olson,
Here.
Miss Melissa Myers,
Here.
and not present, Mr. Cooper Vegas and Mr. Christopher Williams.
Well, don't worry. I also messed up. Jason Olsen came here a second ago. So now I'm looking at order. I'm reading my card. I'm looking. So at this point, we open the citizen input at 6:37. For citizen input, we have Mr. Frank Hardy.
Yes, ma'am. Which one? I'll just talk really loudly. I didn't want to eat up a lot of time. I know everybody's got a busy schedule, and I hope I don't embarrass you, board, De Leon, as I say this, but I feel it's necessary to say tonight we're going into officer elections, and I had the privilege and the honor of helping De Leon and Alex and Melissa with their campaigns, as well as my wife, and it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and I've seen some faces in here tonight that were a part of that, and everybody knows who's been a part of that, how much hard work that is and how much time and effort goes on just to even take one of these seats. Mr. Olson just found that out very recently. So beyond that, the officers do more work than I think what a lot of people are aware of, and I just wanted to publicly congratulate Mr. Daly on English for a job well done over the past year. He led us through 3 different superintendents, one of which is in the room with us tonight, who did a fantastic job, and the other one who's here doing a fantastic job. So hate to come up here and do the hoopla and congratulations and waste people's time, but I feel like these guys deserve it, and I just wanted to give Mr. English a round of applause for a job well done over the last year.
I can say this, the board and the staff has been amazing, and more importantly, the community has been amazing. It really has. The support, the effort, the involvement. When I first started this, I often would hear the phrase that Little Elm is not involved, the community is not involved, and in a good way, that is completely incorrect. They're highly involved, and they highly care. The board cares. Superintendents care, and the people care, so thank you. All right, any more citizen input?
No, sir.
No. We'll close citizen input at 6:40. Next up, approval of minutes. Discuss and approve regular minute meetings for 5/19/2015.
I'll move to approve the minutes for 5/19.
There's a motion, is there a second? Second. There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? There is no discussion. All those in favor of approving minutes for 5/19, raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. One of the things we did last year is when we first started, we moved the officer elections to be one of the first items of the agenda so we can have the officers take over the meeting that were in place. Request that the board look at potentially moving officer meeting to the first item of the agenda, and if you're okay with that, move it up. No objections? Okay, we'll move officer election up to the first portion of the meeting. All right, item 9A, discuss and approve officer election. We'll move to the next item up. First item on the election board is for president of the board. At this point, Dr. Strike, I think will be taking over for that little piece. So first off, we need discussion. Last year we had nominations. Then from there we had second nominations, and then moved from there. So first up, that one. So at this point, we'll call a nomination for president.
I would like to nominate Ms. Harden.
Okay. Sorry, second? Second move motion. The first and the second, Ms. Harden. Sorry. You accept this nomination?
Yes.
She accepts the nomination. All right. All those in favor for the nomination for Ms. Harden for president of Luann ISD, raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed? No one is opposed? At this point, we will turn over officer election to Ms. Harding as president of Luann ISD.
Why don't you scoot your seat down?
Not a problem.
Yeah, just. All right, well, thank you very much. Next order of business is to call for vice president.
I'd like to make a motion for Ms. Melissa Myers as vice president.
I'd like to second that motion.
Any discussion? Ms. Myers? Okay. So all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed?
Was that?
No, or Vice President, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she's now vice president.
All right, you are now Vice
Also,
President.
I should be vice president. You want to switch seats with me? Let's switch seats, yeah. Go through the format. You want to bring your name back over? There you go. Sit myself down here.
Okay, we have one more officer election, and that will be for secretary. So I need a motion or nomination for secretary.
I'll make another nomination.
Okay.
Mr. De Leon English for secretary.
I'll second.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all those in favor of Daleon English for secretary, say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Motion carries. Daleon English is now our secretary.
That was a short seat.
Okay, so we're ready to move on?
Ready to move on?
All right, next order of business is the report to the superintendent.
I'll move around a little bit. Not normally is it the protocol that the superintendent comes up front and addresses, usually speaks from his or her chair. But I wanted to be able to share with you what we're doing moving forward. And I probably have a little more hands-on piece with this than I will in the future. But we need to make sure that we get things kicked off right. And I have experience in this area. So that's why I'm doing the presenting. Other folks that are familiar with it that could do it. But I'm going to do it this evening just to make sure that your questions get answered, it gets explained in its entirety. What we've talked about is a quest for quality and excellence at Little Elm ISD. And that whole idea that mediocrity, it actually can infiltrate an organization and can actually become like a disease that just won't go away. And so we're looking at what are we going to talk about in terms of quality and excellence as we move forward in this district. It starts with our mission. And I think that's the interesting thing about our mission, and this was just developed with our strategic planning team that we'll be honoring a little bit later this evening. But when we think about the fact that the mission of Little Elm ISD is to engage, equip, and empower each student, and again, I'm going to point out that it doesn't say all students, and you'll read a lot of places that will say all students. All students to me is faceless. When I can say each student, it's you and you and you, and I can point to a face and say it's about that child, to realize their full potential, whatever that might be. And if you'll read that mission statement, nowhere in there does it talk about adults. It's about students. And so when we talk about being servant leaders and mission-driven leaders, it's about that right there. And so our decisions are going to be made on what's best for students, not what's best for adults. And that doesn't mean we don't take care of adults, because obviously that's our backbone of what we do. But those adult decisions are going to be made on what's best for kids. So working through our group, we kind of came up with the idea Little Elm engages, Little Elm equips, and Little Elm empowers. And it was something that came out of actually Melissa kind of playing around with it, came out of the group and caught on in our strategic planning team, and it really makes sense about what we're about. This kind of cartoon, I think, says a lot. That this year I've resolved to stop regretting the past, start dreading the future instead. And what's important for us is to remember that the best way to have the future we want is to create it. We don't stop and stand around and wait for it to happen. We're going to step out and create it. And part of this plan I'm going to share with you tonight is how we're going to go about doing that. throughout this presentation, there's just going to be some quotes, and those quotes are backing up kind of the program and why we're doing what we're doing. And they're from folks around the nation that are educational leaders. In some cases, they're business quotes. But I think that this one really speaks, and it's true. I would tell you that's true in every single district I've been in, and I've been in some very tough districts in terms of student achievement, and I've been in some districts that the kids walk in the door for the most part being able to pass the state assessments. But when you think about that, when we're trying to get high student achievement, it's about low expectations and doing away with those. And I would contend that we have low expectations, not just for our poor kids, our at-risk kids, and our tough to teach or tougher to teach kids, but for most of our students. In fact, we may, in some cases, do more injustice to kids at the top than we do kids at the bottom in terms of an academic scale. In our job, if you go back to our mission, it says each student. So it's about every child that walks in the door, comes in the door in a wheelchair, is carried in. We're going to take care of every kid with high expectations for what their full potential might be. This was a little girl that I saw talk, at that time she was swelling, probably a couple of years old, doing a TED Talk. And she got up and was talking to educators and business people, and I loved her comment, when expectations are low, kids will sink to them. And we also know from brain research, the brain always seeks the easiest pattern, the easiest way to solve the problem. And if we give it an easy way out, then that's what our brains are going to do. Growing up in a household where my dad was a worldwide quality control manager for an electronics company, there was a person named Philip Crosby, and he wrote a book, and he's been around for a long time, called Quality is Free. And what it is that quality is free. It's lack of quality that costs us a lot of money. For example, if we don't take care of kids, and we know that we can get kids to read by 3rd grade, we pretty much are going to guarantee their success through school. If they can't read by 3rd grade, we're pretty much guaranteeing they're going to struggle the rest of the way through school. And so when we say quality is free, if we did the job up front, that last stage, do it right the first time, and you don't have to fix it, you don't have to do it over. Because it's much less expensive up front. That's one of the reasons that our staffing plan, if some of you that might have been here can remember that Mr. Gutierrez talked about our reading specialists coming back in. Much better up front, price-wise, to take care of the child. And we're not even talking about the emotional piece of not being able to read and work through, but help them so that they can achieve as they go through. So it's that lack of quality that's costly. We have to do it right the first time. We're not going to use the old model, and we still do this to some degree, but that old model of if you were in manufacturing back in the 60s and the 70s and probably even into the 80s, what would happen is an item went down the line, they would look at it, do their part, and pass it on, and it got down to the end of the line, and then the inspector would check it after it had gone all the way down the assembly line to find out is this quality or not. And if it wasn't, they rejected it and they threw it in what they call the scrap pile. This needs to be reworked. And so they throw it in the scrap pile. Then there was a switch in the United States because they finally caught on to the quality movement, started paying attention to Deming after everybody else did it, particularly Toyota in the 50s. They finally caught on here because world competition got them to the point that our quality better get better. And so what they started to do is have inspection points all along the way so that we caught it before it got to the scrap pile and thrown in the scrap pile and had to be completely reworked. And we used to do that with kids. And I would say to some degree we still do as an educational system, is we move them through knowing that we still have gaps to close. And it's a matter of what are we going to do right the first time to make sure that our kids are where they're at when they get through the system. This one from, I'm a member of the American Society for Quality. And I love this statement by Benjamin. You know, sometimes adults in education, and probably in other businesses too, they're unwilling to let others critique the work. And they use all kinds of excuses and reasons why somebody shouldn't critique their work. And he says, what model we provide for our students are exposed to evaluation multiple times each day. We think it's okay for kids, but then when it comes to critiquing adult work, it's, oh no, wait a minute, I'm a professional, or you don't know what I go through. And the bottom line is we have to be not about master orientation, but about continuous improvement in our business. We know that we have to start with reality, and what I'm showing you is you're going to see the process has all of this included in it. It doesn't matter whether who you read, they're going to tell you have to start with reality. And you have to define reality. That's the first job of a leader, is to define reality. And that's our current state. Where are we at right now? And we can't deny it. We have to pull our heads out of the sand, turn the rocks over, and find out what might be on the rock. Collins and Good to Greats talked about that. It's go ahead, kick the rock, and there may be something ugly underneath there, but it's going to continue to exist till you turn the rock over and say this is reality. And then we have our vision. And our vision is what do we want to become? What's our desired state in the future? And that's why I used the slide to start with. Predict, we have to create our future, and the way we can do that is to predict it and work toward creation of it. And so what we have to do is figure out what that gap that's there. We know the gap exists, and you'll see in the plan how we'll define all of that. But the questions to answer, the problems to solve, the work to accomplish, all deal with what we have to build that bridge to take us from today to tomorrow. And we have to do it rather rapidly. One of the things that bothers me as an educator is we work on continuous improvement is the understanding that we just had a class that went through first grade and second grade and third grade and graduated. We can't repeat for those folks. See, once they're out and they're gone and they're down the road, we can't go back and grab them and say, oh, well, wait a minute, we didn't do a real good job with you, let's bring you back. They're gone. And they're also gone from 4th to 5th and 5th to 6th and 6th to 7th, so we really can't afford to waste time in terms of what we're doing and expectation. Again, just another comment on continuous improvement. That's the master orientation. To get off of that and think about continuous improvement. Here's what we'll do, and this is where it falls through the whole system, and I'll talk about systems briefly. We have district accountability, which is system accountability. That's the overall at the top. What do the aggregated scores look like for the entire district? And from there, we move it to our campuses, which is system unit accountability. So we're taking the big thing, and we're breaking it now down to each campus. And from there, we're going to take it into the course, the team, department. That's part of that system unit accountability, right down to classroom accountability and individual accountability and the part of every educator within the system. And so what we're going to do is you think about, for those that study Deming and all, that whole idea that inspection doesn't work. What works is a culture of prevention. Do it right the first time in a supportive environment, in a risk-free environment with known factors, best practices, up-and-coming practices, creativity, whatever works to get the job done. So if we will do that, we're going to be about individual accountability to meet student needs. That's why, again, we talk about each student. I would say it comes down to each teacher, which we'll show you a little bit more. But it's about collective responsibility. Once we create that, then we can go about adding value to our students. We ought to be asking that every time, what value have I added to my students today? Today, when a student walks out of a classroom, when I was a teacher, I would hope that when my students walk out, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt I've added value to them that day. Because it all adds up. When we can do that, then we're going to move our schools where they need to be. Once that happens and our schools get where they need to be, our students and our parents are going to appreciate that. Our school board is going to appreciate it. We'll have an organization that our community trusts and says this is what it's about. And when you do that, people are willing to invest and build senses of loyalty. Peter Drucker, kind of the father of American management, I love what he says about this, partly because he compliments nonprofits. He said he doesn't know of a single for-profit business as well managed as a few of the nonprofits. The problem is nonprofits can be graded C at best, not for lack of effort. And I think we have to be very careful with that. People are working very hard. It's are they working on the right things? And are they spending the time they need to make sure that improvement is taking place? And in education as well as business, because this is a business book, but there's a book called The Knowing Doing Gap. And in that, they talk about the fact that people let talk substitute for action. And they think they're accomplishing something because they're talking about it. And I would say education is extremely guilty of that, and we need to change that here. But what he says at the end, the words that are important. But why? Lack of focus, and I would contend goal focus, and people knowing where they're headed, of which we're going to spend a lot of time on goal focus as an organization, and for lack of tool competence. What's our goal focus? And then what tools are we going to use to get there and to measure that we are competent in that area? And so the question is, what about us? Where are we at? So, what I think we have to do, everybody talks about excellence, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but it's about defining visual targets. What is the visual evidence? Sometimes it's easy to have conversations, but again, it's soft. It's how do you know this gut? Well, I just have this gut feeling. We have to have visual targets that people can go after. We know that they can get hit. So, if I asked everybody in this room to get out a piece of paper and define excellence, do you think everybody would define it exactly the same or even close? And the answer is no. We know that. But how many times do you hear people talk about, we're going to be excellent. We're going to work toward excellence. What is it? So what I have put together is a program called Excellence Defined. And so we could take all of your individual definitions, and many of them may contain great things and be parts of great pieces of being excellent. However, the question is it manageable? Is it universally understood by all the parties? And that comes from parents on up. That's part of the problem with the state assessment system. I don't want to get off on that. But they created this index system. Nobody gets it. You think a parent understands it? Most educators don't understand it. And so it makes it tough. And then it needs to be measurable. So here's what I give you as a definition of excellence. Conformance to continuously rising requirements. Defined requirements. And I put in there on a particular point that they're continuously rising because we need what I call rapid continuous improvement. So then somebody might say, well, if that's excellence, what's non-excellence? It's lack of conformance to those requirements. Either you meet them or you don't meet them. And you can be moving toward and add a certain value, and we'll talk about that. So, back on this one, we talked about the vision to become the destination district, and we've talked about determining destination for whom or who. Excellence defined then is that process that's going to help us to work toward that. So, what's going to happen is we're going to have a program that's to define excellence in terms of principles of excellence. We're going to set excellence targets, and all of them will be turned into SMART goals. And I'm going to show you some of this just very quickly. I really believe that if you can't measure something, and it can even be qualitative, doesn't have to all be quantitative. You can't measure it, you cannot intentionally improve it. You can try, but you won't know unless there's a measurement. So if somebody says your cholesterol's too high, the doctor, and you never measure it, even though you say, well, I'm going to eat right and I'm going to do this, how do you know you're getting better if you measure? That's why you go back for another blood test, right? And so we're going to make sure that we have measures so we can intentionally improve what we're after. This goes back, I made this up out of I used to be a wrestling coach. And we would talk about, when we went out and wrestled, we would say that you beat the best and you pin the rest. Meaning you're going to beat everybody, and if they're not the best, then you're going to pin them, not just beat them. So here we go. We got benchmark against the best and outscore the rest. Meaning we're not going to benchmark against people that look like us. Because we expect more than that. We should never hear, I was disappointed in our scores until I saw the scores at XYZ school. That's a quote because I heard somebody say that once in another district. Boy, I was really disappointed in scores, and then I saw this campus and I thought, woo, boy, we're okay. No, we're not okay. In fact, I've even heard it just loosely as scores come out, even in our own organization, and people will say, yeah, but you know, the state was flat also. I don't care if the state was flat. I'm not responsible for those kids. I care about them. I'm responsible for these kids. And so we have to ask how we're doing against the best. And so it becomes a matter of establishing a culture that's about a relentless commitment to quality. And relentless is a key word because it's not easy. None of this is easy. This one, Dr. Richard Elmore, he's head of the Principal Center at Harvard University. I love this. He said, you think about it, if you've been in it, and many of you in this room are educators, isn't there always something going on in education? We're always about change. But rarely do those change make a difference in improvement in terms of education. And he says, where progress is measured against a specified instructional goal. And we're going to include that. Mike Smoker, another, Dr. Smoker is an educational researcher. This is why we don't like data. Data almost always points to action. It breaks us out of comfort zones. Go back to the health, and somebody takes your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your whatever, and all of a sudden it's like, you don't like that routine because you like to eat, you like to drink, and you like to not exercise, or whatever it might be. Well, that's a comfortable routine. And data says, you've got to get out of that routine. And if we ignore the data, we promote inaction, inefficiency. And we can't afford to do that because our kids' lives are on the line. This is mission critical, what we do. And people, parents need to understand, the community people need to understand that. If we fail as educators, children get hurt for the rest of their lives. It's a moral responsibility for every single child that we take care of. So, now we come back to a quote from Learning by Doing, a book. One of the most effective strategies for bringing district goals to life is to insist all schools create goals that are specifically linked to district goals. It's about a system. And so we put some things in place, and I'm not going to spend time with these, and I've handed the board some other documents, and I'll get that over to you, Ms. Olson, that show how everybody's going to be on the same page with this. This happens to be math, writing, science, and reading. We've got everything tied to indicators. We're going to have gap from a standard, and we'll set standards in all these different areas. So I'm just showing you a few of the forms, and then I'm going to take you to the actual process. Here's where we get in trouble. These are not live, by the way. These are made-up numbers. And actually, that's not true. The excellence target for 2015 test is 85%, or will be for the 2016 test. And the current is 68%. So let's say that's the fact. We got a 17% gap. Current reality is what? 68%. Desired at this particular time is 85, and guess what? That number is going to move. Continuously rising, that number will move. But we got a gap of 17%, so that first chart I showed, reality, future, we got a gap. So how are we going to close that gap? And we've got which the board has, they're in a working copy, that's why I've not put them out, of all the standards that we're going to set. And they're going to be in multiple areas. They'll cover all the way from STAR, EOC to AP testing, even deep in AP testing in terms of how many students take the class that take the test, and then what our expectations are of a score of 3, 4, or 5, things like that. And it gets real deep. College readiness. And we're going to talk about current reality. We are not on target, ladies and gentlemen, in any of those. In any of them. So, growth needed to close the gap. Here's what you have to do. Remember, it's about every individual child. Each child. We got to identify, and I made that number up. If that's 125 kids, represent that 17%, we have to identify who those 125 children are by face. And then make a plan to how we're going to take care of getting that child from whatever his or her score is to 85. Here's the problem. We could have on one campus one teacher whose kids get, and actually I can find you a greater gap than this one. This one I made up, but I know of a greater gap. 46% of one teacher's children met standard on STAR. Met standard, not our 85, met state standard, which by the way is 50. And that makes you swallow hard. When you think about that, use the 46%. That means a large percentage of those kids couldn't even get 50% of the questions right. That almost shocks you even more. So I got one at 46 and one at 91. Assuming those classes are homogeneous, we have an issue, and it's called random variance. Random variance is the enemy in a system. We can't have pockets of excellence. The 91, that person was over by 6% of what our targeting was. We can't afford to have pockets of excellence in the district. We have to have it throughout the entire system. It shouldn't matter what school doors a child walks in this district. They ought to have the same opportunity and taught at the same levels. So here's what happens in the program. Year 1, we do data tracking. Campus principal will do what's called a RISE presentation to the superintendent's leadership team with plans to close the gaps. So the principals will sit down with the superintendent's leadership team, and they will talk about how they're going to close the gaps. And you have a copy of what that presentation is included. It's 2 pages long. So it's intense. I told the principal the other day I've only had 2 people cry during my year. Year 2, if they don't make it, we'll do an instructional audit and peer review at the campus level, which would be our own curriculum folks going in. I might bring 1 or 2 people I know in, and they'll actually walk classroom by classroom and spend time and do an audit as to, we got to figure out what's wrong here. And it's all in a basis of support. It's all about providing resources and support. If you're ever going to hold somebody accountable, especially in our business, you better make sure you provide resources and support. Again, to ask for accountability and you don't provide resources and support is poor leadership. They would also do those campus-based presentations again and talk deeper now with the curriculum coordinators present, how they're going to reach those excellence targets and why those people all come to the table is to say, we're here to help. Year 3, same as year 2, plus additional interventions and different conversations with leadership at that campus. Exactly what needs to be done. And so those protocols would be yet to be determined. That statement kind of speaks for itself, and that's why we're setting running goals. Who's responsible? Everybody. District level personnel, all the way through the individual students, and everybody in between. And we'll talk about processes about how we'll do that internally. These I'm going to go through quick, but I just want to show you, we've already worked with our principals on this. We'll also work with the system principals. We work with what I call SMART squared, squared SMART goals. The first S is standing for strategic, and the second is specific. Typically, if you read, I'll talk about just specific goals. The problem is you can have very specific goals that are not strategic. We can't fix everything at once, so we have to get the most strategic. And so all these forms, everything's been designed, current reality to the future and the ideal, and then the bridge, just back to that original chart. Then there'll be a template that they have to fill out where they carry from that first form you saw over to this, they carry it over to this, all the way down to responsibility, timelines, strategies, and then they'll move it to targets. This is a form they can use if they don't want to use that. And once people get good at it, I'll even let them use some other forms, but not until they get there. So, unfortunately in education we throw band-aids on things, and part of that is state assessment fault, because they give you 9 months or less to be able to fix problems that were created over a multiple number of years. And so we know that what's going to fix it for us is making sure we have the right level of rigor, which we lack in our district. We lack rigor. That's reality. We're not rigorous enough. A student might say, boy, I thought it was pretty rigorous. We're not. And I'm not going to go into all the data, but I can prove it. Relevance. We have to make sure that what we present to our students, sorry about that, is relevant for today, in today's work world. And relevance is, and I'm going to write a story and a story problem about riding skateboards because you like skateboards, Mr. Miller. That might get a connection for you and me. That's not relevance. Relevance is how are you going to use what I'm going to teach here in the real world. And we'll talk to our teacher. Some of you read the book Start With Why. We're going to talk about the golden circle. Why start with why? What we do too many times is we start on the outside of the circle, which is what? Here's what you're going to do, kids, and here's how you're going to do it. And we don't even get to the why. The Golden Circle says, we're going to start with why. And once you understand why you need to do this, now we're going to move to how we're going to do it, and we're going to move to what the outcome is going to be if you learn this, and that becomes the learning target. And then relationships. Even the very best students, even the seniors that are sitting in here that had people who built and went through school with, even those good students will achieve more when teachers build relationships. And that gentleman right back there, Mr. Parker, he can teach and he's king. And then there has to be relentless resolve, because it's not easy, it's hard. Teaching is the hardest occupation in the world. It's the hardest, I promise. We will work with ISO standards, and I'm not going to spend time to go through all those, but I want you to know we take this pretty deep in terms of all of these types of issues and what we'll take it all down. And through that, I just underlined some of those things. Again, Principle 5, we will approach things systemically, and we will eliminate random variance in the district, because that's killing us. Going back to that one. This is not transactional change. That's the problem in education. We spend too much time in transactional change. Transactional change is the status quo. 7 words of a dying organization are, we've always done it that way. And education has a tendency to do that. And so the problem is transformational change, and why sometimes it doesn't happen. We're too nice. We're nice people in education. And so we have a hard time confronting reality because we're afraid we might hurt somebody's feelings. And so what happens in transformational change, it's disruptive. Because it disrupts that normal routine that data says will be disrupted. And it's intrusive. And why is it intrusive? Because it enters into people's workplace. The campus principal, the assistant principal, the classroom teacher. And we do it all, and we'll do it all in the right way. But it is disruptive and intrusive. And so, again, the one thing is it takes all of us. All of our kids are all of our kids. And we have to get to a point where we control enough variables. Research clearly says we control enough variables to help every child succeed. Clearly control enough variables. But I promise you, in every district I've been in, and I'm sure this one's no different, that I can go find educators at whatever level that spend their days looking out the window. This young man didn't achieve because of his mom, of his dad, because of poverty, because of language, because of color, because of. And what we have to do as educators is put a mirror up. And we have to look in the mirror and say, who can fix it? And so the teacher that comes and says, yeah, but you know what? Mr. Miller's answer back, Ms. Miller's answer back is, oh, you're right, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right on everything you said. Now, what are we going to do about it? Because, see, we can't control outside the window, but we can control what's inside our building with every single child. And we have to get to the point of getting that as a moral commitment. You hear me use that word a lot, the moral part, because it is. It's our responsibility, and there isn't anybody in this business, we're not in a communist society, there isn't anybody in this business that didn't say, okay, I'll go teach. Okay, I'll be a principal. Okay, I'll be a superintendent. Okay, I'll run for the... Nobody, there isn't anybody here whose arm was twisted to get into that role. Could have done whatever they wanted. And so it's important that we do it the right way, and we will. The good thing is, in my 5 months here, this district, and I've been in business 36 years, this district has more great people in it than any place I've ever been. More great people than any place I've ever been. And that's the truth. We have great people here. We just need to give them guidance, help them, because our children deserve it. And so we're going to put plans in place, and some may be uncomfortable at times, and we're going to make decisions that are best for every child. as we move through this system, and we've got the people to do it. And so I'm excited to see what happens over the next couple of years, because we've got people that can get it done. Support of the board, support of our parents and our community. It will be a destination district for those that we can determine that we can serve. So you've got some other documents up there that are working. They're all stamped working copies, I think, other than the RISE presentation isn't, because that's set. But the other data that you have there is a working copy, and you can kind of see the areas that we'll be working with and the targets that we're set, and go from there. But we've got a lot of work to do, but we've got the right people to do it and the right support to do it. And if Mr. Anderson gets us some money, we'll be really lucky. Did you notice that he got up right away and made sure these were switched because he didn't want to pay for a new one in case Anyway, but we're going to start doing things. We just have to do things right. And I always say there's a difference between doing things almost right and right. A huge difference. And when you do things right, and I'll tell a story at Convocation about one of my former students that's alive today, and men are alive today because he did what was right. And I'll tell that story. But anyway, we're heading in the right direction. Does the board have any questions that I can answer?
Very loudly, Mr. Reeves.
Oh, am I next?
Yes, you are next. The first quarter report.
President Harding, congratulations, and members of the board, and Dr. Strike. Just here to go over, David, I don't know if you could bring up that first quarter report of 2015. Going to go over this kind of briefly, just for time, but I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I believe you have it in your packet as well. So if we look at the first quarter growth report for 2015, if you notice that the unemployment rate has dropped in the DFW area, and you look at Little Elm ISD, we're at 3.5%, which is very good. Job growth has increased, and also you see that the annual starts have increased. You can see a lot of activity. I think we have Mary Dave from the Tribute here. You can see a lot of activity down there in the Tribute. So we see a lot of activity. Here's an interesting Texas enrollment trends. If you notice the areas, is there a highlighter on this? Well, you look at Dallas-Fort Worth area, you look at Houston, you look at San Antonio, Austin, and also kind of out west is an anomaly out there. There's the oil and gas boom going out there. You see that's sort of that golden triangle out there, except for over there on the West Texas. That's where the majority of growth is happening within the state of Texas. This kind of looking at region 10 and 11, you notice that Little Elm sort of right there in the middle, it's a little blue. I don't know if you ever see a little blue outline there, but all around us, Frisco, Prosper, Denton, Dallas, Fort Worth, we're all growing, so it's coming our way, This just says that we're ranked 11th in Region 11 for enrollment trends. New home ranking report, you see Little Elm ISD, you notice that annual starts were at 670 for the first quarter of 2015, but if you look over on the right side, the future, those are lots that you'll have future homes on. Now the VDL stands for vacant developed lots, so that means those are lots that are ready to be built on today. So not only do we have 1,800 that are ready to be built today, if you look for the future, we have a lot more. Got a lot more to come. This just shows the start and closing for the first quarter of 2015. You notice that there is a 23, almost 24% increase in starts from this point last year. Okay, closings are a little behind starts, which is good because we want to make sure that inventory is there. The builders don't want to get too far out ahead to make sure that we don't go through one of those downfalls that we had before. This talks about end of closing distributions. You notice that we talked about the Tribute area down south. We're seeing a lot there. We see some in Frisco Lakes, which we don't get a lot of kiddos around there, but we see a lot of movement over there. And so also we see a little bit over there in the western part in Oak Point. We talked about those vacant developed lots. That kind of shows the areas where we have, that's ready to build today. So ready to build today. And notice that southern region, we've got Hidden Cove, Riverdale by the lake, which is near Hackberry, is growing pretty fast as well. And so you kind of see those areas grow. Okay, these are those future lots. They're not ready to build today, but just to see kind of where it's going to be. If you notice, there's Valencia on the lakes, which is our northeastern section. And also you notice over in Oak Point. And when I show you some schools here in the future, we'll show you here in the next couple of slides, we'll show how that growth will impact the enrollment numbers at those schools. And so there's going to have to be some decisions made. Do we do additions at those campuses? Or do we look at trying to build another school? And if we need another school in Oak Point, do we need another one in Valencia? Do we need another high school? Do we need another middle school? And let me tell you, there's not enough money out there for all of them. So what do we do? So I think we have Mr. Walsh who's going to help us a little bit maybe on some stuff in the future. So if we look at overall housing data, this kind of breaks it down by elementary zones. You notice that Hackberry is highlighted and the STEM zone is highlighted. Those are our two top growing districts. So I think we have a principal here from Ms. Gibson there from the Special STEM Academy. I think she can tell us about the growth down there. So you see that those already are at capacity or getting close to capacity. So that means we're going to have to do something at those campuses. So I'll probably come back and ask for money later. Maybe later today. This just talks about different housing activity throughout the district. Gates to Water's Edge, over on our western side. Woodridge Estates is just right there. We have Woodridge Estates, which is just south of Oak Point. I don't know if Ms. Clark is here tonight, but she's got a lot of growth in her school district too. And then Wild Ridge is just north of Oak Point. So they sort of have two developments that are growing. So and she's kind of full now. So what's going to happen? So, I got a lot of good news for y'all tonight. So, over by Brent to show that build-out subdivision at Glen Cove. So when you see that, we'll talk about some build-out analysis here shortly. Housing activity, we talked about the tribute, and Mary Dave, tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I think we're about a third built out. We got about 2/3 to go, maybe half. And so you notice what's going to happen there. We're going to almost double down there. Okay, multifamily development. King is just kind of north of the page there, King Learning Center. And just south of that, we have the Palladium that's going to be coming in shortly, and that's what we call multifamily housing. Now, I think this is geared to more of those single-family professional groups, so I don't know if we'll have a lot of impact on kiddos that go to elementary campus. But we thought we just showed that. That's sort of the economic development area.
70% are one bedroom, I think.
70% are one bedroom. We look at our enrollment history. This is just kind of a neat chart. The top part talks about, it's got yellow and green boxes. That just shows you that if we had no growth at all within Little MISD, which I just showed you we do, but those matriculated through the system, we would have capacity issues because we have higher numbers of kiddos at the lower grade level. So as they move through the system, we're going to have some, so we got kind of a double whammy there. You notice there's a 9th grade number that's usually kind of high because you have those repeaters that need a couple more courses to go to be the sophomore. So that's why you see that number kind of high. We look at the 10-year forecast, again, it just shows you kind of that lower grade levels have higher numbers. Okay, the 10-year forecast broken down for elementary campuses. So you notice that whenever you see a yellow box, that means that's when that campus hits functional capacity. So it looks like in a couple of years, we talked about Oak Point's going to be at functional capacity, and then Hackberry is going to be there at 2020. Now we update this every quarter, and we keep our enrollment data, and we forward that to our demographer to make sure we're on top of everything, so we can see if any of these change. Here's a 10-year forecast for our secondary campuses. We know that Lakeside Middle School has about 1,100 students. That capacity will be about 1,500 students. So we have a little room for growth, but I think in about 5-6 years, we're going to see some capacity concerns at the middle school. At the high school, we are already over the functional capacity of 1,800 at the high school. Here's an interesting study. It's called the build-out analysis for elementary zones. And what that means is our demographer takes a look at if all the developed areas had homes on, how many kids would we get from that? And so you notice elementaries, we'd almost have double the amount of elementaries we have today. Okay, now, I might be retired hopefully by then, when they're all built out, but you see that we're going to have double the amount of elementaries. We look at our, this is junior high, we look at our middle schools, based upon 1,000 student middle school, we're looking at 3 middle schools. 3 middle schools. And if we look at our high school numbers, at build out, we're going to have 3,800 high school students. So, does that mean we spend $120 million on another high school? Or we have not quite as big as Allen, which is 6,000, I'm not sure what that is. So those are the kind of discussions that we'll be doing as our long-range plan to bring to you to show you all these parts and pieces. Go on. So real quick on building capacity, we completed those building capacity considerations and studies. I appreciate Mr. Anderson and his help from his department to get those. And what that means is for elementary campuses, we look at that 22-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio for K through 4th grade, and for 5th grade, it's 24-to-1. So it's, when we show you those capacity studies, that's what that means. When you get to junior high and junior high or middle school and high school, it's a little more difficult because some of those classrooms are not used by students the entire day because those are for teacher training periods, etc. In summary, we're growing pretty fast. We see that the enrollment projections are about 8,200 students by 2019. And if you look at our build-out analysis, we'll have about 14,000 students. And that district will continue to grow for the next 15 to 25 years. So on that happy note, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have for that. That was pretty quick.
This is on Mr. Anderson, isn't it?
That's on Mr. Anderson to find the money. I ask him every day. He gets tired of that. So, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the superintendent spotlight. First up is Mr. Anderson with the CoSERV recognition.
Good evening, Board. I have the privilege of introducing Craig Chambers and Oscar Martinez from CoSERV. They've been a partnership with us in an endowment that was started back in 2011, and they've been funding it since then, and it's it's about $170,000, and to be used for teacher for grants for teachers.
Next one is for the Lowe's recognition for Ms. Pentecost.
Ms. Harding, Board, I am here tonight to present a plaque of appreciation to Lowe's here in town, who provided landscaping both at the middle school and the high school, the middle school in the fall, the high school this spring. And is Justin Cox here? Come on up, Justin. Mike, welcome. Mike Laughlin is one of our parents who helped connect us with Lowe's and really helped facilitate this happening.
You can talk.
Okay. And anyway, at my campus anyway, the front entrance is much more welcoming, and I'm just so appreciative, and I know our students and families are as well. So thank you.
The strategic planning recognitions, Dr. Strike?
Well, this time we're going to recognize those folks that were part of our strategic planning team. It's exciting in that we had both students, community members, parents, educators, all the way through our system became a part of that. Came together for 2.5 days, intense days of working through development of our core values, of our vision, of our mission, of our goals, and then strategies to meet those goals. And it was just neat to watch everybody come together and create. And whenever you come together in a collaborative manner like that, you get a product that represents pretty much everybody, and we reach consensus on things, which simply means that, you know what, I can live with that. I think if everybody did it independently, it would look different, but when you come together, you get the strength of everybody and the views, and very satisfied and happy with how that turned out. And then once we get done with that, that was turned over to our action planning teams, which Mr. Gutierrez will spend a little bit of time talking about. So with that, we're going to start to work on these. I don't know what Pat's serving or something.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's just going to be easier this way.
According to her.
Here we go. Okay. What I'd like to do first is, when the whole process began, one of the things that Dr. Strike shared with us was how in previous strategic planning efforts he's done, they've always had a logo that was very powerful, that really meant a lot. And as you can see, we had a logo that is very meaningful, is moving into the future. And we knew we wanted a design, and we thought, wouldn't it be cool if some of our students could do it? And I was very new, and the first name that came out of everybody's mouth was, please reach out to Mark Parr. His students will definitely come up with something inspirational. I'd like to invite Mark up to introduce his student.
If you've been around here for long, my name is Coach Parr. The kids don't have a clue, and my wife hardly does. We were tasked with coming up with the idea with a logo for this, so I threw it out to my kiddos, and I let them work in groups, which normally I don't, even though I know cooperative learning is supposed to be a real big deal, but I couldn't find in any art museum any paintings that had two names on it. So in this group, I kind of let them pick their own groups, and within the group that for the logo was selected, I had two sophomore students. Neither one of them are here tonight. Nicholas Laparo and Elise. I'll never get her name right. I better read it. Oh, I wrote it down. Lundberg. I always want to call her Lundberg. And two sophomores on here, and a senior who is here, graduating and leaving us. And I never got her name right until a while ago. Elizabeth, would you come forward, please? Elizabeth Rodas. She's a senior member of this group, and I'm pretty sure the one who inspired most of it, because she's an excellent, excellent artist. There you go.
And Elizabeth's mom, Rosa, is here tonight. There she is.
Thank you, dear. Thanks for letting me give you something to read while you're on. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
It was a real privilege having a chance to work with the students. I actually, in my work group, had two students, and I can tell you honestly that we had to work really hard to hold our own with them. They were amazing. And so what we thought we'd do is we'd bring up the students first. The students, is Alexandra here?
She didn't make it. Okay, I'm sorry about that. She's amazing. She was our middle school, one of our middle school representatives. Magnus Chandler is from Prestwick STEM. Come on up. Take a picture. And Jennifer and Felix, his parents are here. One, two, three. Yay. Okay. Yay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, she wants some more.
One more for Mom.
Mom pictures.
Thank you.
That's this.
One of our top 10 graduating seniors, Samantha Elliott, is next. Her mom and dad, Sharon and Michael, are here. And her grandparents, Bob and June Bishop. One, two, three, cheese.
Over to the right.
Oh, we got some of this.
Oh, get some. Okay, mom and dad.
There you go. Marcus? I didn't think so. Okay, Taylor? All right, Brian is here. Yay. Also a senior. Is Melody? There you go. That's Brian's mom, Melody. Yay. Megan McAtee. Megan's parents, Elisa and Randy McAtee, are here, as well as grandparents, Bill and Jennifer Slutz. We have a few missing, but just keep digging down. Okay. Next up, did Sheena Andrews make it? Josh, I didn't see. Josh has a brand new baby girl, so. Mike Bruno. Kelly? I didn't see. Yeah. Mary is here. Mary Day. Mary's with Matthews Southwest and is one of our best contacts at the Tribute. Cleota? Oh, sorry. Cleota Epps is our Director of Human Resource Services. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
She just knows her make load. Come on out.
Christy Gibson. Christy's our principal at the Prestwick STEM Academy.
Hi, Kristen.
Ashley's here. Ashley Glover. Okay. Mark Fernell and Joseph Florentino didn't get to make it. Matthew Gutierrez. Our Deputy Superintendent. Long walk, sorry. Denise Hanty. Leanna Harding's already up here.
It's upside down. I'm just kidding.
James Hutchins and Chad Hyde weren't able to make it tonight. Denise Jensen. She's still here? Okay. Kristen Jones. Is John Lohman, is he still here? He was here.
Is it for food?
John's bedroom.
It's on vacation.
Trey Meador is not here. Cindy Micka? You're right. You're next. Cindy's our assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum and learning services. I'm getting there.
1, 2, 3.
Yay. Liz Miller. The principal of our new Colin Powell 6th grade center. Yay. Clint Miller. We are alphabetized.
We did the better half first.
Kim Mills. Melissa Myers. Tom Parker. Renee Pentecost. Jenny Petrasic. I don't see her. Edmund Ramos. I didn't see him come in, no. Rod Reeves. Yeah.
There's a check behind the picture.
I get one.
Oh, you.
I get one. Yay! Who's next? Deanna Sigler. Okay. Michael Sorgren. Was he here? Okay. Dr. Strike, you get one. And Russell, where are you? There you are. Russell Vinton is our Director of Technology and what's the
Digital
other?
learning and
Digital
media
learning
services.
And media services. And.
1, 2, 3. My eyes open.
Don't go far, y'all.
Okay.
Matthew? Matthew's going to introduce y'all to our action planning teams, who took what the strategic planning team did and defined the action steps that we needed to take to reach our strategies.
First off, before I present the awards, I certainly want to thank those who assumed the leadership positions in serving as the facilitators for the 4 action planning teams in the areas of CTE, teaching and learning, recruitment and retention and engagement of employees, and communications and community partnerships. So I certainly want to thank those 4 facilitators. I'm going to go ahead and recognize the first group in the area of CTE and our facilitator, Tasha Sheehan. Tom Parker.
You know, you could just.
Okay. And this next group was the area of communications and community partnerships, which was facilitated by a coordinator of communications, Cecilia Jones. Linda Jansen.
I want a picture of this whole group. Oh, okay.
Sandra Howell.
I'm sorry.
You want it all?
I do want them all.
Okay, well, okay. You caught me on. Come on.
Oh,
Keisha Brown.
we're going to need to switch.
Elisa McAtee. Yamila Quintero. Did you see?
Oops. Here we go. What a great looking group.
What man's great?
1, 2, 3. Good. Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Our next action planning team was in the area of recruitment, retention, and employee engagement. This team was facilitated by Cleota Epps, Director of Human Resources. Part of this team, Beverly Jones Purvis. And in the area of teaching and learning, this group was facilitated by our Director of Professional Learning, Ashley Helms.
All right, students. There we go. Wonderful. Oh, sorry. Wait, look at it right now. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Good.
Again, I just want to thank that group because those 4 groups utilize their own time to meet over a course of 4 to 6 weeks, whether they were face-to-face meetings or Google Hangouts. Those individuals spent their own time over the weekend and evenings working on providing additional guidance, looking at the work that the strategic planning conducted over the course of 3 days and created some great results. So we're certainly excited about rolling that out. So again, thank you all for those of you who participated on the planning teams.
And last but not least for this afternoon or this evening, I'd like to bring up Mary Day from Matthews Southwest. What they do for us. They're very involved with our schools, but they're definitely very involved with those of us who are trying to reach out into the community. They're helping us make connections in the community and meet other companies and corporations and realtors so that the realtors understand the growth potential that's in our schools and how wonderful they already are, but that we have so much more potential. So here's the official plaque. And we created a piece of artwork using our one of our children's pieces of artwork for your office.
Oh, thank you.
Picture. You need to come in this too.
Okay.
Well, actually, Cecilia really should be in here too.
That's good.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, there you go. Let's do that.
This new president's lost control.
There we go.
Okay, the board will now recess into closed session as permitted by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Code Sub Chapter 551.074 and 551.072 at 7:57. Okay, we're into the action items. We are going to move item B down to discussion items only. And we're going to start with item C, since item A was previously already voted on. So Mr. English is going to lead us.
Thank you, President Hardy. For members of the board, we've had a long way of coming to a conclusion on our board operating procedures. We finally made our last revision. We had staff actually take a look at the revisions, and we had our own Dr. Strike look at the revisions. The revisions were incorporated into the board operating procedures based on the comments from the board, the staff, as well as Dr. Strike. And at this time, the board operating procedures are ready to be voted on for approval, and will take effect June 22nd. Is that right, Dr. Strike?
Actually, can take effect immediately.
Immediately, okay.
Yes, sir.
Immediately, it will take effect. I'd like to say thank you for everyone for being involved in this process. It's been a long process, but I think we got a really good handle on board operating procedures going forward. Any questions?
What's the policy to change later on down the date, like make amendments to the policies? What's the procedure? Because going through these, I know it's a couple things I haven't had the opportunity to ask some questions. So at the point in time when we decide, is there something we need to change? What's the policies in that?
This is the policy as we come aboard, make a motion, or send a request over to the board president, and make a request that we look at the review, send some your amendments, then just go ahead and put staff and from there we vote on minutes.
Okay.
It's great. Any other questions from the board?
No more
I'll
questions?
ask my questions. I'll ask my questions in the email. Okay, I'll put them on.
All right, so since there's no more questions, I need a motion to approve the board operating procedures.
So moved.
There's a motion?
We have a second. A second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right.
Okay, we will now discuss the TRE. Mr. Anderson?
Good evening, Board. John Walsh is here to present and discuss with us the tax ratification election. And we're at a really unique, I think, point in Little Elm ISD financially where he has some options for us that he was here at also the Finance Committee meeting and presented the Texas ratification election options there. He's going to do it again, give us a presentation tonight.
Good evening. Pleasure to be here tonight. I really enjoyed the first part of the meeting. It's great to see a lot of community involvement, develop that ownership. I applaud what you're trying to do for the district to have excellence for all students. It's very good. In order to do that, you need money. So this is an enabler. It's a resource. It's a potential resource for you. So considering the tax ratification election, this is just going to be a brief overview. Back in 2006 was the first year you could have a tax ratification election. They had just changed the school finance system because of a Supreme Court decision. It's called West Orange Cove 2. It was made in October 2005. And the Supreme Court found that the system was unconstitutional because so many districts, like Little Elm, were at $1.50 in tax rate on the M&O side, or within 5 pennies of it, you were just below $1.50. That you weren't able to generate additional revenue to educate your kids, to enrich programs, or meet identified student needs. So the legislature said, not only is it unconstitutional because the system is so low funded that everybody had to be at the highest possible tax rate in order just to keep schools open, that in addition to that, it was if the state set the rate because the funding was inadequate. So everybody had to have the highest tax rate. And then they said, when you change the system, everybody has to have meaningful local discretion to enrich. So what the legislature did, they actually did a funding swap. They lowered property taxes in 2 years from $1.50 maximum. You would get the same money you had the previous 2 years, but your tax rate would be only two-thirds of what it was. So if you were at $1.50, you would be compressed to $1. So you got the same amount of money you had before, but you had up to $1.17 tax rate if you needed more money. They gave the first 4 of those 17 pennies to you without an election, okay? But if you wanted to raise your M&O rate above $1.04, you had to adopt the rate and then immediately ask voters if they approved it, okay? So we have seen a lot of TREs, but very few the first year. There were about 1,020 school districts in the state, and only 15 tried the first year. The state had estimated that none would try. But I was in a poor area of the state between San Antonio and Laredo. It's not poor anymore. It's the home of Eagle Ford Shale right now. But at that time, there was nothing coming out of the ground, except a lot of poor kids. So I assisted my district, Pearsall. I was a business manager. I had prepared to retire in 2006, but a friend of mine was superintendent in Pearsall, and he said my business manager had passed away, and he was just didn't know what to do. So I spent a morning with him, and then told him he could make $2.3 million more if he kept the tax rate the same instead of dropping it. And it was because of these great pennies that the state provides if you raise your rate above the compressed rate. So 4 neighboring districts decided to come along for the ride, and actually 2 in Grayson County, 2 little districts. So I got 7 of the 15 to pass. All of them passed, and since then I enjoyed it so much that I've helped 128 districts with tax ratification elections, and 121 have passed. It's a 95% success rate. And I just have specialized in that niche, and I am the most experienced, most successful TRE consultant in the state. It's a very narrow area, and now I know, I keep learning more and more about less and less, and pretty soon I'm going to know everything about nothing. So one of the things I discovered in looking at your numbers is that do you remember that the state cut public education $5.4 billion at the end of the 10-11 school year? And I decided to look at what happened to your state funding since then. And when they reduced the funding in the 11, 12, and 12, 13 school years, the weighted ADA changed, and that's what we usually talk about. So I did my analysis in average daily attendance, not weighted average daily attendance, because it was constant across all those years. But anyway, the first year you lost $2.5 million over what you would have received had the funding not been lowered. The next year you lost $3.5 million. The next year about $500,000. And then you began to recover in 14, 15. You actually were ahead $1.4 million, and then next year at the 104. Now this was before the last change. It probably would be a little bit higher. But some of my ADA numbers are a little bit low. Right now I'm saying that you still have a $3 million shortfall in funding from the state based on what they did to you a few years ago. Okay, so that's contributed to the tightness of your budget and the revenue difficulties that you're having, and other districts across the state. What it looks like for you, there's 2 lines on this graph, and it's just to illustrate a principle, is that the last 2 shows 14-15 and 15-16. If you stay at 104, your revenue level is not increasing much. You see that? It's the last part of that blue line. And it's even a smaller increase in revenue per student. The red line is revenue per student, and the blue line is total revenue. The reason why the blue line is higher than the red line is that you've gotten additional money mainly because of an increase in students. The formula is pretty equitable in that the more kids you have, the more money you get, okay? But if you raise that rate to 117, you get a lot more money. And basically, you're getting over $415 per weighted student. Using the latest template with the latest updates from the legislature, using Omar's template, the version 2 that just came out a few days ago, if you went at 157, your total revenue would be $56.9 million, and that includes your local M&O taxes plus the state aid you receive for M&O purposes. If you stayed at 104, you'd make $5.2 million, and the difference is $4.7 million, which is an 8% increase in revenue. Instead of saying 4.7, those numbers are based on estimates of students. and estimates of property value. Both of those, we have a ballpark estimate, but we don't know the final numbers. So to be conservative, I don't think we should promise something yet, but 4 million is a ballpark description of that, and it's a conservative number. So I'm going to use 4 million in the discussion that follows, although it could very well be 4.7 million. If you do a TRE, a fail-safe tax rate strategy is to, it's difficult to get voters to pass a 13-cent tax increase. And one of the strategies that a lot of my districts have been using is a tax rate exchange, in which the amount you increase your M&O tax rate by, you lower your debt tax rate. And the reason why that makes sense is the state gives you a lot more money if you put your pennies on this side than on the debt side. There's just a difference in funding. If the state hadn't done that, there would be no reason to do that. So you have to be careful, because it's dangerous to lower your debt rate 13 pennies. How will you make your debt payment? You're very fortunate in that you have a very nice, you've been frugal and managed conservatively. You've got over $5 million in your INS fund balance. So, and your property value, if you've looked the last 2 years, your property value increased more than 15% each year. And that looks to continue based on the demographic patterns that you've seen in your community. There's these undeveloped lots that just, if somebody needs to build a house on them, and they'll be able to sell it. So there's a real potential for additional revenue coming, and that makes it feasible in your case to do that. Raise your M&O rate and lower the debt rate, and you're going to generate additional money on the M&O side, and also not put yourself in any difficulty on the debt side, because you've got two factors: a healthy INS fund balance and an excellent potential for growth in property value, which can meet current and future predicted debt levels. So what we can do is gain additional money without increasing the tax rate this year. There is a danger, though. The danger is, see, in these columns I analyze I present the fail-safe tax rate strategy. You're at 104 and 50, and I'm assuming, and it's probably prudent, to keep the tax rate at that 154. Look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. Look at the third and fourth column. Describe the options I'd like for you to have. Is that if you win the election, I want your rate to be 154, and you were 154 with the same pattern in the third column of numbers, but your M&O goes up from 104 to 117, that's an increase of 13, and your debt rate drops from 50 to 37, which is a decrease of 13. So your total rate is still 154 in both places. But if you just published the 117 and 37, you ran one ad and you adopted that tax rate, this is what happens if you lose that election. I'm sure you know what happens. If you don't get it passed, it goes back to the rollback rate. What's the M&O rollback rate? $1.04. You're allowed to keep $1.04, your M&O, but to that we add the debt rate. So if we lost that election, if we had only advertised the one rate, 117 and 37, if we win, it's $1.54. If we lose, the 117 changes to what? 104, and you add 37 cents to that, that's 141. That's a 13-cent decrease. Now, we're going to be in a world of hurt if we do that and lower the debt rate and we're not making that additional money, see? So what I do is, what happens is, when you adopt the tax rate, it's got two parts. If you want what we want, if we lose, we still want to be at 154. You know, if we can't get the extra money, we want to be at 104 and 50. The only way you can keep that 50 is if you pair it with the 117, and that adds up to 167. Now, most people don't know this, but in 2009, the Texas legislature said the truth in taxation procedures that we have to go through before we set a tax rate are designed to make the public aware of what we're doing and give them a chance to comment and make recommendations to the board before you actually adopt the rate. If you're going to lower the debt rate, they said, the voter doesn't need all that protection. Does the voter need protection from lowering the tax rate and lowering the debt rate? And the legislature said no. So, without publishing a notice and without holding a public hearing, any board is allowed to lower the debt rate. So the solution is get the public to approve a rate that protects us in case we lose the election, okay? But then if they approve it, then lower the debt rate, the 13 pennies. In other words, what we essentially say to the public is, if you approve us moving, you have to have an election. We want to just change without changing the total rate. We have to get their permission to raise the M&O side. We don't need their permission to lower the debt side. And in fact, most of your action is policy setting and has contingent actions. For example, if you adopted a policy that said, if you commit an assault, you'll be assigned to alternative education program. At the time you adopted that policy, you didn't have a particular student that committed a particular assault, did you? But as soon as somebody met the conditions of your policy, it took effect and that kid went, right? So you you can make decisions that have future consequences. So what I do to make this, to apply the fail-safe strategy, I adopt the high rate, and in that same motion I say, furthermore, if voters approve the 167 in a tax ratification election in order to reduce the debt rate 13 pennies, I move that we increase the tax rate in M&O to 117 and INS 137 for a total rate of 154. In other words, they don't even have to trust you to lower it after the election. Before the election is ever held, when you adopt the 117 tax rate, you also adopt the lowering of the debt rate if it's approved. And therefore, what you can tell the people, what's going to happen in this election? Well, if you approve it, the tax rate's going to be 154, the same as last year. And if you vote against it, the tax rate's going to be 154, the same as last year. But if you approve it, we make $4 million. And if you don't approve it, we make $0 additional dollars. Okay? Now, your average voter, they've got good common sense, okay? They may not even know what they do is called cost-benefit analysis, but when they have an important decision to make, they ask themselves, well, what good does it do me, and what does it cost me? What value does it give me, and what does it cost me, okay? What's the value of approving this? You make $4 million. How much more does it cost to get the $4 million than it costs to not get the $4 million? Well, the tax rate to get $4 million is 154. The tax rate to get 0 is 154. Does it cost them anything to get this money? It does not. What you're doing is you're making the state has some potential money for you sitting on the table in Austin. And it's going to stay there until you raise that M&O rate to 117. But once you raise it, that additional state money comes to you. If you keep it at 104, there's some potential money that you're not getting. I worry about, is the state going to keep its promises? When they didn't keep their promise on the $5.4 million, they kept their promise on the extra pennies. It was constitutionally mandated, and the cut did not affect these extra pennies. The state has never not paid these additional M&O pennies for people that taxed them. Okay, that's what a fail-safe strategy is. If you go above 104, if you want the $4 million, then you need to adopt the 117, and the voters need to approve the total rate in a tax ratification election. So you may be considering that because you want the $4 million, but you're only making it possible for the community to consider and possibly approve this. If you don't adopt the 117 rate, the rate's you know, all that you can do is go to 104, but they have to say yes. So you're just giving them the opportunity to generate the money without increasing the total tax rate. But if you don't make that decision, they don't have that opportunity. So you're really just increasing local control by giving them a chance to say, do we want the extra money without a tax increase or not? These are the highest funded enrichment pennies ever provided by the state, and guess what? The Austin yield, Austin has a problem of urban flight. Their property value is going up. If you've been to downtown Austin, it's a vibrant, exciting place to be, but their student count is going down. The Austin yield in 2006, it produced about $40. It's going to produce for you $74. And the yield will never be less than that. In fact, the second year of this new biennium, it's going to produce $77.53 per weighted student. So if you, for every $100 you raise with those 13 pennies, the state's going to give you 37 state dollars in addition to your local dollars. So you provided $137 per weighted student, and it's only cost you $100. So you have that opportunity now. Your rate is still 32 cents lower than it was in 2005 when it was $1.59. So the state compressed tax rates and gave tax relief to property owners, at least in the rate. But you'll still, instead of having about 49 cents of tax relief, you're going to get you'll still have tax relief of 32 pennies in the rate. And then once you get to 117, you can't go to 118 the next year, 119, unless they change the state law. And you have an opportunity to do your debt rate. Basically, if you use fund balance, then you need less rate, and you have a healthy fund balance. And in the future, your values are increasing rapidly, and that will help you pay those. So it is feasible to lower your debt rate. They generate more money. I'm going to go into detail right here. The guarantee for this next year is $74.28 per weighted ADA. Let me give you a brief review of weighted ADA. Some students are more expensive to educate than others. For example, students in special education program require specialized training, smaller classes, some devices, career in tech, whether it's an auto body shop or new computers, robotics, whatever it is. Then there's bilingual education, lower classes, specialized training, get kids to mastery in 2 languages, gifted and talented, more expensive, and also kids whose families are economically disadvantaged, who are on free and reduced lunch. They've missed some enrichment opportunities at the family level, and it's up to the district to give them the opportunity to succeed. So anyway, our projected weighted ADA for next year is 8,401. When you multiply those two numbers together, that penny is going to produce 624,000. Now the state measures your wealth this year by last year's property value. You were $2,355,000,000 total property value. If you move that decimal over 4 places to the left, that tells you what a penny raises. A penny is 0.01 and then per $100 value. So that number, my 235,000, if you move the decimal 4 places to the right, that would give you the 2,355,000,000. Your penny raises 235,000. The state says you make that penny tax effort, and we'll give you the difference between that and what Austin makes when they tax a penny. So they have to give you how much? 388,000. So your yield on investing a penny with the state, let me give an example on return on investment. You divide what you make from an investment by the amount you invest. When I was back in the dark ages, when I was going to college and working in the summers, I'd save my money, what I didn't need for hamburgers and gasoline, and I put that $100 into the bank, and they give me $5 if I kept it there 1 year. So the amount I yielded from the investment was $5. The amount I invested was 100. 5 divided by 100 is 5%. So I've invested 235 with the state. What's my yield on that investment? It's 388,000. So you divide 388 by 235, it goes more than once. We're making 164%. Now, what bank, do y'all have any CDs that make 164%? This is a wonderful investment opportunity, and it's only provided by the state of Texas to districts that tax these pennies. But every district in the state could get that guarantee, okay? And that's what you can make. Now, the pennies above that have a much smaller yield. It's only $31.95, but your penny only produces about $29 per watt. You make a little bit more on this penny. The guarantee, if you multiply those two together, is $2.68. Your penny still raises $2.35. That's what your local taxpayers contribute. And the state gives you $32,000. That doesn't sound good compared to the big amount they just gave us. But I'll tell you what, it's 14%. You're not going to find 14% in a bank CD either. So even though it's not as great as the Austin yield, it's not a bad yield. That was the yield of Dallas in 2005 when they started the system, and they haven't raised it. They're under pressure to do that, but pressure hasn't done much to the legislatures lately. Now, your debt pennies are funded on a lower student count number. It's 88. Going back, our WADA is 8,401, and our projected ADA is 6,833. So it's a lower number. The yield number is 35. That just produces a little bit more than our penny, only 3,600, okay? In terms of a yield, it's 1.53%. Now, this is the best slide of the whole show, folks. The green part represents what your penny produces. The gold part is what the state gives you if you tax a particular penny. And look at those Austin pennies. Then look at the Dallas pennies, and then look at your debt pennies. You can hardly see any gold on that debt penny, can't you? Next year, if you get any, this is your last year to get any state debt assistance. You will get no additional state aid on your debt pennies. But until your value grows up past that gold bar, you'll continue to get some Dallas money. But you're making so much more on your Austin pennies that even if you were recaptured slightly on a Dallas penny, you get 6 of those, the Austin pennies would overflow and you would have no net recapture for a while, for a long while. These are great investments, 165%, 14%. Your penny raises 29, the Austin pennies are brought up to 74. For every student, every one of those 8,400 students, they give you $445 for every one of those 6 pennies. And then on the Dallas pennies, they give you $32, which is only $3 per watt, but it's for all 11 pennies, and your total is $4 million. And what would you do with that? Perhaps, I've heard this, that you're competing with some high-paying districts in this area, and that this would enable you to improve salary and benefits for all staff in order to attract and retain highly qualified staff, so that you don't train teachers for surrounding districts. As soon as they get their feet on the ground, we train them, make them good teachers, and then somebody else pays them $5,000 a year or more, and goodbye. Replace the state and federal funding cuts and continue to maintain and move toward that vision of excellence in 2020 that you need resources to do. We've got a bonus. The state is really helping us with an important fact. The legislature has a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would add an additional $15,000 homestead exemption. And I'm not sure about the 1415 number, but on the estimated certified roll, the market value of a home was $227, and the current taxable value would have been $207 at the 154 rate. That's the bill, $3,186. That's the average home in Little Elm, okay? Now, if we got the $15,000, that taxable would drop by $15,000, wouldn't it? Okay, so it'd be the 192, and the 154, it'd only be 2958. It actually drops. You could do this, make the $4 million, and the tax bill would actually go down $228 if voters approve that constitutional amendment. Now, I don't think there's much chance that voters are not going to approve a constitutional amendment that drops their tax bill over $200. Do you? I think that's a lead pipe cinch. We need to remind, people get confused. If they see the word or hear inkling of anything related to a tax increase, they're going to say, that's not good. Well, your voters, especially alert, are the over 65 disabled homesteads. Their taxes will not go up. They will never go up. They might go down. They might go down. The longer they've had them frozen, the less likely they will go down. But if they just had them frozen recently, there's a possibility that $15,000 decrease could actually lower their taxes. Economic development, economists say, if we spend $1 and the people that get it spend it, somebody else gets it and they're likely to spend it. So in a year's time, it rolls around about 7 times. So that $4 million could have a $28 million economic impact on the area. In previous elections, if you look at them by elections, there have been, this is hard to believe, 506 tax ratification elections in the state of Texas. 375 of them have been approved by voters. That's 74% if you just look at elections. But a lot of these districts tried once, lost, then did a better job communicating and got it passed the second time because they needed the money. So a lot of those are repeat districts. If you look at it by districts, there have been 422 school districts try the elections. 356 of those were ultimately approved. Like some of them did more than once, but there are 356 districts that have rates higher than 104 on the M&O side. That's an 84% success rate. Now, 41% of the school districts in Texas have tried TREs. It's no longer a fringe activity. This is happening frequently. It has happened. And over 35% of the districts in the state of Texas have approved TREs. So, if you did the fail-safe strategy, the ballot would read this way. There's no local option on this language. It's in statute. Approving the ad valorem tax rate of $167 per $100 valuation in the Little Elm ISD for the current year, a rate that is 13 cents per $100 valuation higher than the rollback tax rate. Now, there are 2 possible results of that tax ratification election. If the majority vote for the 167, 154 will be the district tax rate because of previous contingent board action to reduce the debt rate by 13 cents if voters approve the $1.67. The district will have access to over $4 million in additional funds this year and every year thereafter because the 117 becomes the new rollback rate. If the majority vote against the tax rate of 167, the tax rate will be 154. That's the same as if they approve it, but you don't get any extra money. You're probably familiar with the truth in taxation process. Before you can set a tax rate, you must have received your estimated certified values, which you received on April 30th, or certified values from your appraisal district. You must publish a notice of a public meeting to discuss the proposed tax rate and/or budget. You have to conduct that public meeting, and then you may make the appropriate motion. Okay, that's just your standard process. After that, you don't have a choice. You don't have to wait for a petition. If you adopt a rate above 104 on the M&O side, you must call an election. So you might as well adopt a tax rate, call the election. There is, most of these elections, you know that bond elections have to be held on the uniform election day, either in May or November. And a lot of districts fussed about this tax ratification election coming so late that it affects the issuance of tax statements and uncertainty about the budget. So the legislature in 2009 allowed districts that call an election in as few as 30 days after the tax rate, after the election was called. So I've taken advantage of this, and many districts have. It's possible for Little Elm to conduct this election September 5th. And that's a really good time to hold an election for a number of reasons. It's like Happy New Year. The school started, the kids are excited, moms are excited because the kids are out from underfoot, dads are excited because sports are on. The kids are happy to see each other every day. The employees are glad because they know they're going to make a paycheck for the next year. And it's just a real exciting time of year. Another thing, there is in the folder. I want to go through how to make this happen. It's the time of year that parents are most likely to come up to a meeting at school so that they can be informed. This is complicated. A raising of the M&O rate and a dropping of the lower rate is complicated, and it requires an effort to communicate to the public, make sure they understand the issues involved. So you don't want to pair this with a long election in November where there are going to be some state constitutional, there may be some other local elections. So to me, if you have one item on the ballot and you have it at a time of year that you can get good attendance at meetings to get the public educated, that improves your chances. To take advantage of this, you have to adopt your tax rate before your budget. You have to have 2 meetings instead of 1, and you have to do the tax rate before the budget. Now, why they did that, I don't know. I just know they did it, okay? So this is a plan that would work for Little M to get the early election. First of all, at your June meeting, you would propose the tax rates, date, time, and place for public meeting to discuss proposed tax rate, so that you're essentially giving administration the authority to publish that notice, that you've thought about the rates and you know what rates you want. Then between, you have to hold the public hearing and adopt the tax rate before you get certified values. You usually get certified values July 25th. That's when the chief appraiser is supposed to deliver that value to you. But here we have to set it before then. So we've picked a date, July 20th, okay? I believe that's one of your normal meeting dates. So if you're ready to adopt the rate that night, then you have to hold a public meeting that night. Then going back, you have to publish a notice in the newspaper that at least 10, not more than 30 nor less than 10 days before, okay? So proposing the rate in June 22nd gives the administration the opportunity to publish that notice. There's going to be 2 notices, right? I talked about a 167, right? And I talked about 154. The 154 being the 117 and 37 and the 167 being the 117 and 50. We publish both those notices. We also publish a box above it that explains it, okay? Then they come out, and then the public knows we're proposing a high rate, but we're going to lower it to the current rate, see? And then that satisfies the notice. Then you hold the meeting, you discuss all of that. You can use my PowerPoint. And then following that, you close that public meeting. The public's going to have the opportunity to attend and ask questions or make comments. You adopt the tax rate with that compound contingent motion that sets it high and then lowers it if they approve it. And then you also have done your planning for that election date. What's nice about that is the early election period begins the week of in-service before school starts on August 24th. The first day of early voting is August 19th. So you can have some back-to-school nights, and you could actually have event voting if the administration would make not a vote for this, but just an explanation similar to what, have I asked anybody to vote for anything here? No, I've just said, this is how the system works. This is how much we make on the pennies. This is what happens if you vote for it, what happens if you vote against it. This is factual, unbiased information about the opportunities. You present this, and you know, the people really support this school district. In the past, they've supported you in bond elections. They're becoming more involved. And I think that if they understand this, that's the perfect time to get it. The reason why any bond elections, any elections fail is not because a majority of the people don't support the public schools. It's that those people are busy. They're working, both parents work, They're heavily involved in the activities of their children, and you know the pace of modern life. If it's not easy for them to vote, they may not vote. So that's why the event voting is very important in order to give everybody the opportunity to participate. So after that, only after you've adopted the rate are you allowed to publish the budget public hearing notice. Then you have to wait 10 days and then adopt your budget before September 1. So that's all laid out there. And we have to get the copy of that election order. And we have, in that election order, you plan where the early voting is going to take place, and you also plan any event voting, so you coordinate them now. So there's a lot of work that has to go in there right now so that you get all your early events, what date, what time are these meetings going to be held, so that the voting can take place at these locations throughout the district. And then for that period of time, you know, there's an office somewhere that people can come and vote even when there's not an event, right? And then 4 days before the election, that stops, and then you have the election day on a Saturday. The Saturday enables people who either support or oppose this to go out and get people to vote, right? Okay. And then you celebrate after September 5th. After the election's over, you feel good and you feel like you have some resources to address some of the goals you have for your district. I had put some of this in the PowerPoint. I'm going to skip past it real quick because you've gotten a better summary there on your paper than I've got. So you have to adopt the election order, the early election requirements I just went over. This is important. You may not use employee time or ISD funds to encourage voters to ratify or not ratify. But you may provide factual, unbiased information to the public about the TRE and information related to the TRE, like this PowerPoint. And employee time and district funds may be used by the school district to provide this factual information to the public. In fact, you could take a summary of this and you could email it to every email address of every voter in the district. You can do a bulk mail to every address in the district. You can put up flyers and posters that say when the public meetings are and summarize this information. In fact, I provide a voter information bulletin that can be handed out every time a presentation is made. So in summary, we're almost at the end, guys. The results of approving the 167 tax rate are a tax rate of 154 because of previous contingent action by the board to reduce the debt rate by 13 pennies if voters approve the 167. You make that over $4 million. The tax bill should go down about $228. And that's no increase in the tax rate, no future M&O tax increases, significant economic development. Here's the part I like the best. The reason why we have these pennies is because the children in Little Elm deserve the same quality education and the same amount of funding per student as children in Austin and children in Dallas. And the only way we get that equal educational opportunity is to tax these pennies. Now, if they don't approve it, the tax rate's 154, the same as if they had approved it. But the district doesn't gain the $4 million. The residential homestead tax bill is still going to drop $228. There's not going to be any change in the tax rate from last year. But students are missing out on that highest guarantee, and we're missing out on some economic development this year. What is this? It's a plan to generate an additional $4 million. And the reason why it works is the state gives us a lot more money for the pennies on the M&O side than they do on the debt side. And I'll be quiet, I promise. Be happy to answer any questions or comments the board has.
I do have two questions for you. On the voters, is there any particular percentage? Is it just a 50% majority?
It is the one vote more than half.
Okay. And then the second question is, on a couple of the slides you presented why loss. You said you've won 95% of your cases, but the state average is a little bit lower than that. Besides marketing, that's what I'm hearing from you, is the marketing side of it. Is there any other reason why you haven't won or the ISDs haven't won the vote? Is there another negative out there that we're unaware of? because you're seeing most of the time the voters aren't approving it, it's because we didn't mark it. The
Well,
ISD didn't mark it right.
Yeah,
Is there anything
some,
else above
yeah,
and beyond
there
that?
are other issues. In other words, I was in a district and they had just taken a successful basketball coach and fired him or reassigned him to elementary PE. If there are other issues disturbing the community, that can overrule any rational decision that comes up. In other words, sometimes there are local issues. One of my communities, there was there were a lot of people living in rental properties. Most of these rental properties were owned by one individual, and he put the word out that if this passed, he was going to raise the rents even though there was no tax increase. In other words, it was misinformation and fear and a propensity to dislike anything related with the word tax rate and increase. So, recently, for example, Waxahachie, I've had a little district in this area in Region 10. I mean, you're 10, you're in 11, you're close to 10. It was unanimous. I've had two other little districts where there was one vote in each district against it. Now, they didn't have a great vote total. Waxahachie did the exact same thing last year. They had 98% voter approval. Now, I think one of the things, they did an excellent job. I helped them. They did an excellent job communicating. They really worked hard. But they had had a school security issue, and they said they were going to use the money to improve school security. So I'm sure that helped them get that higher percentage, but it's not unusual for me to get 70, 80, 90% approval on this.
Well, thank you, appreciate that.
So Ms. Powell knows not to reassign.
Well, hey, if there's a hard decision that's polarizing, put it off a year.
Or until September 6th.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Just going straight down the list. Dr. Seidel. All right, the next item will be the 2015-2016 compensation. Mr. Gutierrez.
Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Strike. During the 84th legislative session, which just recently convened, the legislation approved additional monies above and beyond current allotment, and the district is now in a position where we weren't before to make a recommendation in anticipation of this additional funding for a salary increase. So what I am proposing today is just to discuss that possibility. What I will come back with on the 22nd for the regular meeting is an actual percentage. What I did include on the board agenda item summary sheet was what it cost per percentage for our district. It is an estimated $320,000 per percentage. If we were to give a 1% increase, it would cost us $320,000. And the reason I bring this up today is one, we've not had that discussion about a salary increase. And every day we learn of a new district in our area giving an increase. And as you all are well aware of, we are not competitive when it comes most specifically to our teacher salaries. Most recently, Allen ISD and Plano ISD gave a 3% increase. McKinney gave an increase, but I couldn't find that exact percentage, which brings their starting teacher salary to $49,000. Our starting teacher salary is $45,500. And as you all know, the cost of living is increasing, the cost of benefits likely to increase. And so what we are going to propose with the additional funding that is going to be coming from the state is a salary recommendation. I did leave that blank, but I will come with the percentage on the 22nd.
Thanks, Becky. I think also tied to that was sort of the conversation with the TRE that will have an impact on what may be offered if the TRE passes. Also, just doing a little research in the past based on a comment that Board Member Williams made about in the past, the district had tried to help with insurance costs. The issue is it was part of the salary package on the salary side, which meant it got taxed. If we put it on the health benefit side, we're still at $225, which is state minimum, and we have been at that since we rose to that amount. And giving, for example, let's use a number like $100 extra, that's $100 non-taxable for those folks on that side of it, which makes a difference. Otherwise, they're losing, maybe 28, 30% of the money when you say that we're helping you, but you just got taxed on it because it didn't show up on the health side. And so dependent upon state funding, dependent upon potential calling and passing of the TRE, will have a lot to do with the total package. However, we should have the state dollars that Matthew will be able to come back and potentially make a recommendation, or Mr. Roberts, whoever does that recommendation.
So he will have he'll have the figure from the state what we think is going to be our increase, potential
without
increase.
the TRE,
Without the TRE.
base coming out of this last legislative session.
Perfect.
And it's not going to be as much as what was originally projected, but we want to come with a hard number so that we're able to give an accurate picture of where we're at budget-wise, and we may look at two budgets, one with the TRE passing, one without.
Is the legislation passed, the budgeting for this year already? I think it was SB.
Yes, but we don't have.
They didn't give a number.
But we don't have a number yet. Should be within the next week or so, a harder number. We have a guesstimate, but rather throw that out there. Mr. Anderson has to play a little bit with some ADA numbers and some things coming out of our PEDS reports to know exactly what that's going to look like. Because it's a raise in the basic a lot.
Is this increase across the board or just for teachers?
What we would recommend would be an across-the-board salary increase. So if we come forward with 1%, we would recommend that it's across the board for all employees in the district. And once we have better numbers, we'll be able to come back and say this is what the recommendation is without the TRE, and should a TRE pass, then this is what would be recommended thereafter.
Additional amounts above and
in addition to that salary increase and possibly contributing to employees' health benefits. And what we don't want to see is we've seen a trend, and we've discussed it before, where this is a great training grounds for teachers, but then you can go next door and get a $5,000 raise, which equates to a car payment. And so we want to be attractive in many ways. That we are unique, and we've got some great things happening in our district that is attractive for many people, that makes us competitive and different from those larger districts. But we certainly want to take care of our employees and to also have competitive salaries when it comes to recruiting as well. And so I do want to thank you for approving the staffing plan, which included the increase to the bilingual stipend. Things like that are certainly helping us and giving us an edge.
All right, Mr. Gutierrez, allocation request for fine arts.
As you know, our band program for a district our size is rather large, and it's quite impressive. The band program is going to continue to grow, and as a result, there is a need for additional instruments to accommodate that growth. And what you did see was a memo from Mr. Felice, our Director of Bands and Fine Arts Coordinator, who was asking for $104,000 just to keep up with the growth of students. And this is more specifically for those instruments that typically students don't buy, that are very expensive, such as a bassoon and a percussion equipment, a tuba, baritones, French horns, which can cost $5,000 to $10,000. And this is not replacement equipment. This is just simply to keep up with growth of the program.
And this is, you're asking us to come out of the fund balance, not necessarily the budget for next year, correct?
This would come out of fund balance for the instruments next year. We're looking at 30 additional band students at the high school and 100 additional middle school band students. So a growth of 100 brand new students.
What's the overall impact of the budget?
The financial implications would be $104,374, which would come from our fund balance.
Current fund balance is at
Current fund balance.
current fund balance.
Can I do some explaining?
Thank
We
you,
have,
Mr. Anderson.
We have a, budgeted fund balance, and these dollars that he's asking will be budgeted against our fund balance, but our actual fund balance at the end of the year, after we get all of our revenue in, because everything's estimated, that we possibly could be adding to fund balance or breaking even at what we've been looking at. Over the past, is that clear?
Including this 100,000 or not including it?
Including it. And,
So you think we'll still gain in the fund balance or possibly just break even with this request?
I believe that we'll, based on our projections, that we'll break even. And over the past, I've been here, I guess, 3 months. There's been others that have come up to ask to use, to budget against fund balance. It's a budget against fund balance, but our actuals, our revenue looks, we're going to be, I think it was underestimated. And so I believe that our fund balance is, that we won't be dipping into fund balance as of this moment in time.
Okay.
Grant, so in some of that, for example, the revenue, if you say, so we're talking like the federal impact aid.
Yeah,
you know,
well, we
I just want
also-
So they know where all of a sudden did money come from.
Yeah,
You want-
well, yeah, that-
Give a couple categories.
Yeah, the budgeting, the impact aid. I believe our actuals, and Beth can help me if she remembers the numbers, were $450,000. I believe we budgeted $150,000. And it should have been budgeted $150,000. It wasn't really certain how much we'll be getting. And, the strategy was very conservative in revenue projections. And I appreciated that, especially coming in to where we're at. So,
Appreciate it too.
but during the year will be, the comment will always be that we're budgeting against fund balance, and the actuals may come out higher, and we'll try to continually keep that number updated. Is that, do you have any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions on balance? All right. Okay, Mr. Gutierrez again, and the waiver for missed instructional days.
Yes, as you recall, it seems like it was just yesterday, we missed 2 days of school in addition to our weather days. I'm sorry, I'm reading this wrong. We had 2 bad weather days on February the 23rd and February the 24th. And as we are required before applying for a waiver to make up those days to get board approval before we go through the Texas Education Agency to get the waiver for missed instructional days approved. So I am asking for you all to approve the waivers for those 2 days.
All right. So we'll move on to discuss policy EG local. EG or EB?
EG.
EG.
We currently do not have,
Is it the agenda or?
Board book is saying
The board
ED.
book agenda item.
the previous agenda item was EB legal
Okay.
for missed instructional days, excuse me.
My apologies.
Currently, Little Elm ISD does not have an EG local board policy. So in an effort to ensure an equitable and viable curriculum for every student in our district, the administration is recommending the adoption of the EG local policy. This policy would ensure every student has equal access to our curriculum by outlining the role of a board member, the superintendent, district level administrators, campus level administrators, and teachers in the development, review, and implementation of the district's curriculum. The design and implementation of the curriculum shall be consistent with the board's adopted mission and applicable goals, state law, and TEA rules. As during Dr. Strike's presentation earlier on Excellence Defined, I think this is the perfect opportunity for us to really look at having a policy in place that is aligned with the Excellence Defined. As you saw that chart that Dr. Strike put up, it is going to outline the specific roles of various individuals within our organization. And so what this policy does is it does that for us. Currently, some of our neighboring districts, just to name a few, many districts in the state have this policy in place. Allen, Frisco, Louisville, and Plano have the EG local policy in place.
Just to comment on that too, you know, we co-create our curriculum, our coordinators direct it. At the end of the day, curriculum needs to be a central administrative function. It's built top down, bottom up, involving teachers coming to the table to help write, other specialists. What this piece does is says that basically once that's developed, we're going to be tight on that, and that is the board-approved curriculum. It's the district curriculum, and it's what's to be delivered. That's where we get our guaranteed viable curriculum statement that Matthew talked about. And then we implement it in what management calls a loose, tight coupling manner, meaning that we're tight on the curriculum, but we're loose on how it can be delivered, and the bottom line is results. But this is a piece of guarantees that gives us, unlike universities that have, you know, the whole academic freedom and tenure thing, we have a controlled curriculum that we want to have delivered so that every child receives it. And truly the only where it's ever guaranteed is by the teachers delivering the curriculum. This is what gives it a little bit of a statement that says that it will be delivered.
And this certainly, it makes it a non-negotiable, and it's not just for teachers, but in addition, campus level administrators as well as district level administrators.
We'll move on to policy FL local.
Periodically, our district receives open records requests for various types of information. And one piece of information that we periodically do receive is information on our students. And so in an effort to protect our students' privacy, we are making a recommendation to make some changes on FL Local. If you'll look at page 5 of 5, we are, rather than school-sponsored purposes, we want to change sponsored to school-related and define exactly what school-related purposes are. But the purpose of this recommendation for a change in local policy is the very last statement, that the district shall not release any student directory information to third-party requesters. That means that if we do get a request for student addresses, phone numbers, emails, we will not share that information. Whereas before, we weren't really tied to a policy. There were certain things that we could share as long as they were for school-sponsored purposes. So this allows us to really have a policy to stand by, and when we are getting a third-party vendor request, we can deny them access to that information. We're living in, with our technology, it can be very scary, even though these individuals are only wanting to market certain things. But if you recall, back in the day when 10, 15, 20 years ago, when people would get information from school districts and then go and try to sell a product like Who's Who among American high school students, yeah, that for many that was an honor, but really, when I think about, there were 20 people out of my graduating class of 100 who have that so-called honor, but you had to pay the $25 so you could get your name in the book. So that's an example, but what's really worrisome is what can some of these third parties do with that information. They get student information first, and then from there, what more can they get as far as family information?
Carrie, that we didn't already.
What are we currently doing right now? Are we just filtering the requests ourselves through the administration, or how are we filtering third-party requests?
We get our public information requests through they all go through the Communication Services Office, and then we make the determination as to what we can and cannot share. And at times, very seldomly, we will seek counsel if it is a very sensitive topic. But we just want to be able to not have to ask ourselves those questions and talk to one another. We just want to be able to firmly say, no, as per our district policy, we do not share any student information with third parties.
That's fine. I was just curious as to how we're operating right now, so thank you.
So by adding the statement, it'll supersede any state requirements or any?
Correct.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you.
Item F, Summer 2015 Construction Projects, Mr. Reed.
Thank you, President Harding, members of the board, and Dr. Strike. Just here to talk about some projects that we're going to bring to you. Just going to show you a couple and then look for on the 22nd for approval. And so I'd like to go through those very quickly. I know it's getting kind of late. So we take a look at, kind of want to give you a quick overview of the district strategy, that how we're doing this is part of a master plan. And the reason why we're bringing these to you at this time is because they're time sensitive in the sense of getting the construction done during this summer. But please understand, we're working on that long range plan that will be given to you all back in August or September, and this kind of fits in with that. We want to, as Dr. Strike indicated, we're here for every student. We just created a new facility down there at the STEM Academy, Prestwick STEM Academy. And I'm sure all of you have been to that academy down there, Prestwick STEM. And so if you look at that facility compared to some of our other facilities, we want to make sure that we get the same learning environment to every student. It's working hand in hand with our facility assessments. We've kicked off our facility assessments this past week, and we're going to each campus to look at the MEP systems in that. Also looking at the flooring, getting with the principals, just all aspects of the building to see what we need to do to bring those up to par. It also fits into our long-range plan that I just discussed. And so remember, we talked about the demographics package, and we noticed that we're going to have a lot of new facilities coming online in the near future. So we want to make sure as we build new facilities that we bring those existing facilities up to standard. And also we're doing facility standards. So like in the operations department, we want to make sure whatever we do now, hopefully I'll be here for a long time, Dr. Strike, but let's just say for whatever reason I'm not here, there's something in place that says, okay, this is what we're going to be doing for each of our facilities. This is why we're doing it. This is the type of hardware we want to use. This is the type of HVAC equipment we want to use, just to get a standard for the district. So remember, at Little Elm High School, we have the classroom, it may be hard to see, but we have classroom renovations that we're doing. We've kicked off our meeting on Wednesday for those. We have the trade and industry lab that we'll be doing as well. And we'll be talking about future additions. And so does that mean a ninth grade center? Does that mean a CTE center? Does that, if you look at our bonding capacity, are we able to do that? Maybe they're just additions. So we're going to bring you a complete plan of action on those types of things. We have the Hackberry Elementary School project that we want to bring to you. What's involved in that would be exterior improvements, some flooring, native landscaping. We talked about learning environments and also office upgrades. So we want to take that facility and really bring it up to par. If we look at Brent Elementary School, if you look at their outdoor areas concerning their playgrounds, you notice we took some pictures. You can see that a lot of times when especially we had a lot of rain, so that's dirt now, but it was a big swamp earlier. And then we have some trees there that have caused, they're live oaks, that have caused a lot of water issues with the concrete and takes a lot of water from it, so we need to really do some concrete repairs, new hardscape areas for those students to where they can play without being in the mud, and then also playground upgrades. Make sure we have some nice playground equipment for them. Chavez is similar. If you take a look at that, there's actually at Chavez there's no irrigation systems, and so I think this shows you that there's no grass in that area. So we'd like to try to incorporate irrigation. Now what we're going to do there is probably start small, because every time I talk to Mr. Anderson, he says he doesn't have any money. So I want to start small and kind of work from there, because some of this should be on the operational side, but we need to get to a point to where we can kind of maintain it at a level. If we look at Lakeview Elementary School project, we're talking about providing a fence around that playground area. Remember, that's a lot of our life skills and adaptive life skills students are at that campus. So we want to provide a fenced-in area and also some flat work, some concrete work, so those students can get from their classroom safely to the playground. Remember, every student is important in every capacity. If we look at a child care project, and we talked with Ms. Hooten, I believe is here, we're looking at adding some pathways, native landscaping, and upgrades to the playground, maybe some sunshades, things of that nature. Lakeside Middle School kitchen project. We have some foundation opportunities there at Lakeside Middle School. And so what we're trying to do is Ms. Carolyn Tarver, who is head of our child nutrition program, has been spearheading this project. But what we're going to be doing there is doing a new freezer and cooler, foundation repairs, new dry storage, and also renovate the serving line area. Now this mainly will come from her budget. Remember, her budget is separate from ours, and so the majority of that will come from her budget. So what do we do next? We're going to review the pricing. We should have that tomorrow or the next day with the administrative team. We're going to recommend a plan of action to you on the 22nd. If we do receive approval, we will get it completed this summer. And then we're going to continue our long-range plan. Remember, this is in line with what we're going to do long-term. So what are some projects on the horizon? We talked about those additions to Little Elm High School, upgrades to other campuses. So when I talk to principals about what we're doing at other campuses, they're like, hey, wait, what about me? I got a lot of stuff you can do at my campus. So we'll be bringing other opportunities for you to take a look at. Future school facilities. Okay, we know if you looked at the numbers, high school, we have an issue today. Elementary school for Hackberry, for Oak Point, 3 years. What are we going to do? 3 to 5 years, middle school, capacity concerns. What do you do? How do you weigh all this? And of course, my favorite, the operations facility, which is the maintenance, grounds, custodial, and transportation. So we'll be bringing that back to you. Remember that we're located where King is, over in the kind of the district area, the downtown district for Little Elm, town of Little Elm. And so that's an economic, Mr. Olson knows about that. It's an economic area. So we're looking at that and maybe relocating that facility somewhere else. So we'll be bringing that to you in the near future. And that was very quick. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So there was no work done last year during the renovations at the middle school in the cafeteria?
We did do renovations in the cafeteria, however, in the kitchen, we did not. That would have been a great, we were not aware of the foundation issue. That sort of spurred the project, was we had some foundation concerns that happened this past year. And so when we took a look at it, we said, well, we're going to have to replace the freezer and the cooler. So if we do that, can we do some other things? And also, I believe that Ms. Tarver's budget was taken for the STEM Academy's equipment. So I think it was almost $600,000. So she didn't have enough in her fund balance to be able to address it at that time anyway.
And with all the rain and the flooding that's gone on, have we encountered any foundation issues or anything like that?
Not at this time. So I'm hoping not, Mr. Flores. So no, sir.
Watered that grass grow yet?
No, there's a big lake out in front. So we haven't, now before there used to be some water issues that we've already addressed, and we have not seen that reoccur a couple of years ago. So at this time we have no water issues, unless you've heard differently.
Do you have any impact to the high school, to any of the football fields?
on the Dexter football fields or any of the running paths or anything down there with all that?
No, we did have water that went across Waterside, that it did affect the new practice field that we created. So there were some issues there, and also there was a sinkhole that happened. I don't know if you've seen it right there by the track. And so we're working with our structural engineers to make sure we go back with something that's adequate so that won't happen again.
Baseball fields?
Baseball fields, softball fields are still in good shape.
When we go to
You're
the
talking about
next,
the sinkhole, I'm sorry, you're talking about the sinkhole at the football stadium, right? Not at
The high school.
What about the one at the football stadium?
You mean the athletic complex?
Yeah, the athletic
So I think Ms. Howell and I have been working on that concerning the track. It's repaired. So,
I was thinking about all the renovations, and we talked about the kitchen. For the high school, we know there's an issue there with the cafeteria. Is that part of the future plan, and will that also come out of this services budget?
that's correct. So we're taking a look at the high school, and so we're taking a look at the kitchen. We know there's a capacity issue there along with the fine arts area. So we're actually meeting with the architects concerning that this week on different options to bring to you for that. And so the funding sources, we'll talk about that concerning if that's going to be on INS funding side, because it's my understanding, even with the TRE, that we'll be able to sell $20-something million in outstanding voter-approved bonds for some work.
That project, the cafeteria would have to be commingled monies between where it's spent in terms of the interior part of the cafeteria, with us pushing a wall out, which may or may not be the solution, but if we can't build a full facility with another cafeteria, then we need to expand that one. That construction work would have to come out of Rod's area, and there are certain pieces that can come out of the fund balance that would be in food service.
Let me ask you, on the food, if we expand the cafeteria, is there any thought about potentially commingling instruction with the food cafeteria, meaning that culinary materials or potential culinary aspects?
With the CTE?
Yeah.
That's a great idea. We can always look at that, investigate that a little
Yeah,
further.
I don't know that there's enough space there. We can certainly look at it. Plus, you're going to run into some health laws and some different things that you cross over with those facilities, and the fact that they start pretty early in there to do the facilities. So probably difficult to do that, but certainly the culinary arts piece would be one that would be on the table for a CTE center, wherever that's located.
I have two things. The one, there was some flooding in the middle school that I know in one of the labs. There's water that's always coming in there, and
Is this at Powell or is that the
At
middle school?
Lakeside.
Lakeside Middle School?
Yes.
Well, that could be from the acid pits. That could be one understanding. So we've addressed that concern. I'm not sure if you've heard something more recent than that.
well,
but-
during May, when we were up there every Saturday, and we
Yes.
were constantly going in there and cleaning out rooms.
So it's,
they were flooded.
I think it was the science labs,
Yes.
Ms. Myers, and I believe that was from the acid pits, and we've had those cleaned out, and so we shouldn't see that reoccur, but if you hear anything, please let me know
Okay.
on that.
And then the second one was, if you, and you might already have this in there, but for Brent, I had talked to you a little bit about that fence, if there's a way that we can fence that back.
That's on there.
Okay.
That's on there, yes. We got you covered,
Thank
if y'all approve it, so.
you. The only other question I had too is, I know that the PTAs have been really good about, I think they're buying playground equipment for STEM, or they're putting in some playground equipment.
They are, the PTA and the HOA are working together on that, so they have a real good partnership down there. And so what we're doing, and Dr. Strikes really asked us to get with the PTAs at all the other campuses. And so what we're doing is with our facility assessment teams, we're meeting with the principals, those PTA community members for those particular schools to make sure we coordinate with them on the resources that they can provide, and then we'll pick up the slack where we can.
Okay, because I know that, with Brent as well, we've bought rugs in the past, chairs, different things that the PTA can help.
That's right.
Assist with that, so I'd love to see more collaboration.
Yes, ma'am, sure will.
Thank you. Do you have any discussion or questions?
Thank y'all very much.
Thanks, Ron.
Right, we'll move on to item G, financial reports. Mr. Anderson?
Let's see, you have the April standard financial reports in front of you. If you had a chance to look at them. First are the budget amendments, and included in that budget amendment is the pending board approval of the purchase of band equipment that Matthew discussed. And then the budget to actual financials is showing 84% of our revenue has been realized, 71% of our expenditures, and that's budgeted.
One simple question myself, real quick. On the amendments, you talked about the purchase of band equipment. I know there's two different items, 001 and 041. Did we need, why is that broken out? Or what exactly is it?
001 is the high school and 041 is the middle school.
That's their state ID.
State ID, okay. Just trying to figure that one out. Mr. Anderson, we'll move on to gifts and donations.
And you'll see in front of you the gifts and donations that were made after the last board meeting. And you see CoServe is on there for $20,000, and the tribute $10,000 for the top 10 scholarship.
Any questions? Gifts and donations? Move on to item I for interlocal cooperation agreement for tax collection.
Yeah, and this is the interlocal, standard interlocal with our tax assessor, Denton. Just renewing this year.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. We'll move on to report to the board president, but I am going to pass that over to Mr. English.
The only report we had was for board operating procedures. Other than that, everything else. So,
We're ready to move on. All right, so, Mr. Flores, any future agenda items?
Future agenda item, but more of a, where are we with the website and the, I think that handed out a survey and looked at a few options for upgrading the website. Are we still looking at that, or?
Yeah, actually, that we can do that either in the June 22nd board report. Pat, you're supposed to look up.
Sorry.
All right, is that 22nd? Could you do a report on the rollout of the new website?
Absolutely.
I mean, that it's ready, it's hot, it's up, it's running in the background, ready to go out. You'll really, really like it. It leaps right into the 21st century after 15 years.
Mr.
But a
Olson?
lot of people have worked hard on it. It's still a lot of work to do because there's so much in the background to do on that thing. But we'll put that for an actual report. Is that worth it?
No future items for me.
Mr. English?
Nothing for me.
Ms. Myers?
I just had two. I think we talked at the last meeting as far as the changes at Crestwick for band or PE, if there's any update on how that's going to function for next school year.
Let's do that on the June 22nd. That work for you?
That works great.
So band and PE.
And then my second one was just, I think we talked about this, I don't know, a couple months ago, but the grading policy, I know it was being reviewed. Ms. Nicholas had a committee that was reviewing. Just want to see where we're at with that.
I've got that on my list also. So we'll, if she isn't ready June 22nd, we'll do it in July. But as I understand it, I don't, Matthew, have you been part of that? You may have.
And it'll come to the
So June
board in
22nd,
July.
is that?
It'll come to the board in July.
July, okay. So is that okay, the July meeting?
Absolutely, yep.
So July 20th, then we'll do that one.
That's all.
Ms. Olson, do you have one?
No, I actually was glad you brought that up. Somebody brought that to my attention and I forgot about it, so thank you.
I got you. Okay. Well, I have just one. Last year, we had Ms. Mika and Mr. Gutierrez and myself, we had done some work on the bullying policy for the student, on the student side of it. And I'd like to see if we can probably look deeper into that and expand it over into the staff and administration side to kind of make it an all-encompassing policy. So I'd sent, I forgot the policy, but I did send it to him in an email. Which one was it? EIA, yes. And we can do that in July.
July?
Yeah.
Okay. So that'd be July 20th. Perfect.
Okay, any other future agenda items? Okay, Mr. Flores, any more comments?
I'd just like to say thank you to all the administrative staff and teachers. It's been very welcoming and very helpful in information I've requested, so can't thank them enough. It's made it a very easy transition answering probably simple questions for me, or for them, but for me, it makes things understanding a lot easier getting on board, so thank you very much.
I think the only thing we have to talk about is the board retreat. We're going to have that in August, and then team of 8 training. We decide when that's going to take place. Team of 8. And I think we still need to, we need to finish our goals, didn't we?
No.
We still need to go. And that could be in the team of 8 training. Is that correct? That makes sense?
For goals.
Yeah. And then we got Ms. Olson, Ms. Fowler.
That can be either one of them, depending on what you want for the agenda of the team of 8 training.
Okay.
If you're going to use the search firm, Dr.
Griggs.
Dr. Griggs.
I can reach out to
You may
him.
want to
Have a copy.
put the other in a board retreat.
Okay.
I guess the only comment I had was we attended the high school graduation last week. I just wanted to give a big shout out to everybody that worked on that. It was fabulous. It ran so smoothly. For 300 and some kids who were out in 2 hours, I was shocked. It was just very well done, from the programs to the speeches, everything. Just a big shout out to everybody that worked on the graduation. It was wonderful.
And then my only comment, I just kind of want to reiterate on the citizen input by my husband this evening. DeLeon, you did a fantastic job over this last year. You've got us through a lot of things. There's a lot of projects still sitting on the table, and I hope you're going to continue with that.
Continue to help.
Thank you very much. So, all right, well, that's all I had. I hope you guys didn't have too long of an evening, and we will move for superintendent comments. Sorry, I was ready to go.
Now, just real quick, again, my appreciation to the board during graduation. Somebody made the comment to me that was there that it was like a private school graduation because there was a family atmosphere, and for you all to be able to get up and hand a diploma to somebody you knew, besides in the case of 3 folks having children, and just the camaraderie of that class as you watch kids cheer for each other, very respectful. The band and the choir, phenomenal. I got emails coming to me just saying, hey, really love graduation. And so I think that's a unique thing that we were able to pull. I mean, it was, to me, I sat there and I thought it's like we're graduating 25 kids or something, not 300 kids, because of the closeness. And I think that's one of the things that we can bring to the table that you're not going to find in a lot of districts that are our size or certainly above, is that closeness. And that's parents and the board and administration and teachers, and it was just a nice atmosphere. So thank you for your part in that. Very appreciative of that. And then just this summer, I get people that I run across say, well, are you glad summer's here? When it really slows down, I say, no, summer's when it speeds up, because we have the clash of 2 school years. You're trying to finish one and start the other, and so they intermix. In the summer's a very busy time, but Ashley Helms and Cindy and her department putting on the Learning Summit, just fabulous. I walked by some of the rooms that are going on today, some here, some over at Lakeside. We got teachers that have signed up for every session that they can get into the whole week. They just have to have 12 hours, so 2 days, but yet they've signed up for all 4 days. They've just, and the learning that's going on is great, really high level people. And so it's exciting to see our people getting together and talking about, heading in the right direction, doing what's right for kids. And for us, it's about that professional learning. And, those are the things sometimes it takes money to do. But I will tell you, a lot of our stuff is even in-house of people that we have here that are really good and are respected and stand up and share with their peers. So I think that's really good. And then the only thing board-wise, I talked with Ms. Gregg, and she's going to try and make the July meeting. We haven't had a chance to honor her, thank her for 2 terms of service, which when you think about 6 years of the time that you've given in her heart into that. So I talked with her, and she's going to try and ask him, it's her travel schedule, and she said, I've asked him, please, on July 20th, can you make me in town so that she can come and be properly recognized for her 6 years of service. So I hope that works out for her. Otherwise, we're on summer hours, so we're closed on Fridays, so we're Monday through Thursday with extended hours. And we've got some flex with people depending on what works best for them, starting at 7 or 7:30. So there's some flex there, but it's first day, gone what?
Okay. Motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Okay, motion carries. We're adjourned at 10:14.